Alright, it's been quite some time since the last video, but I've done quite a bit in that time. I did have to take a hiatus for a little while due to unrelated issues, but I'm back working on the Voxel engine. So, without further ado, let's get started. The first thing you might notice in the videos is that I have noise reduction. I'm doing this in real time with socks and pulse audio. So that's pretty neat. So I guess we should go ahead and start going over some stuff. Things I've done. I have implemented, like I said, I just put noise reduction in my videos. I've implemented basic terrain generation, and I've done some stress testing mostly, and fixed a bunch of bugs. So it's not a lot that you can actually see, but I have actually worked on it quite a bit. So we're gonna go ahead and start it. I'm probably gonna have to pause the video because you don't want to wait 10 minutes for the world to load up, because it's doing 8 by 8 by 8 chunks, which is let's see. So if we do 8 by 8 by 8 chunks, that's 512 chunks. 512, and each chunk is 16 by 16 by 16. So it's got to generate around 2 million blocks. So it takes a little while to load up. But I'll go ahead and start doing that. My microphone may start clipping out because with this noise reduction, it is kind of flaky if your CPU usage spikes real high. But I guess we'll see in the recording. Let's go ahead and give it a try. So one thing I could do is just make this floating real quick, and you can see here it's got a little thing showing how our progress is, and it'll generate chunks, and then it'll start generating the geometry, which is the slower part actually, and I'm going to get to that once we actually get the engine loaded up here. It takes a solid 5 minutes to load because it's not threaded. At the moment, chunk loading is not threaded. This is probably going to be one of the next things I do. See, this is the slow part. It gets faster once it gets to like certain points. Like, you'll see it skip ahead a bunch because half the chunks are empty, so it can build them up real fast. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so that way you don't have to sit through this. Alright, it's all loaded up. And while it takes a long time to load chunks in, it renders pretty fast actually, considering it's doing around 2,000 draw calls. This runs buttery smooth on my machine. I could probably optimize it. I can actually cut that by about 30%. Due to how I have the chunk set up, because I have a different draw call for each face of each chunk. So if I use a dot product, I can just avoid drawing the faces in the back entirely. So that's pretty cool, I guess. But anyway, as you can see here, we got terrain generation. It's pretty basic. I'll go ahead and explain how I did it. What I did is I used libnoise, which is a noise generation library. This is, as you can see, is not 2D. It's just not using a 2D height map because, as you see, we have all these cliffs and overhangs and stuff like this. It's kind of a cool mountainous terrain. Yeah, so that's pretty neat. So we got all our stuff here. Now, I'm going to go into... Well, actually, I'm going to finish explaining terrain generation first. Basically, what it does is it has if you've ever used libnoise, you'll know that it generates on a -1 to 1 scale for most things. So the first thing I do is, here's a good example of what I'm about to explain, is first thing I do is I basically completely max out the threshold, because occasionally it'll generate values outside of -1 and 1. So that's why you get some of these flat parts running up against the top and bottom. I haven't figured out how to get rid of those yet, but I'll probably figure that out pretty easily. I can't imagine it's too difficult. I just instead of just cutting it off, I might just allow it to go down a little bit, but who knows? I'll figure it out eventually. But yeah, basically what I've done though is it's kind of like a gradient. So down here, the gradient generates a -1 value, always below, I think it's 3. So if we delete these blocks here, it might be 10 actually. Yeah, it's 10, I think. As you can see, I also fixed the camera, although I haven't put limiters on it, so you can just spin it all the way around. So that's another good thing I did. I ended up ditching quaternions and just using plain old view matrix, and are using reverse projection to get the whatchamacallit vector, camera vector, eye vector, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, and so basically generates -1 values for a bias scale at the very bottom here, and then below this it just generates like -100 to cut it off, because I was getting weird issues where it would just go down through the bottom of the world because libnoise is dumb. But yeah, so then as you go up here, it generates higher and higher values for that bias gradient type deal until it gets up to here, where it generates a 1, so it goes from -1 down there to 1, and then it adds it to the generated libnoise value. So up here, or I think it's -1 to 1, I forget now, but basically up here, the bias is added onto the libnoise value so that it drops below the threshold, or above the threshold, I don't remember which way it goes, to generate blocks. And as you go down to the bottom, it does the opposite. So you end up with fancy terrain like this. And you could, if you look at the back there, you can kind of see the clipping plane over there because I haven't added fog. You can see it cut off in the distance. Might add fog. That shouldn't take too long. Imagine it'll probably only take a couple hours to do. But that's what I've done. So now I'm going to explain the #1 problem I'm currently having. That is, chunk geometry building is slow. By slow, I mean it's like molasses slow. And that is a problem because nobody wants that when they're playing a game. I'm going to demonstrate for you. I click. That was actually pretty fast, but there's a noticeable delay. If I go over here, I'd find a busy chunk because the more blocks that are in a chunk, the longer it takes for it to update. Okay, see? Now we're getting nice long delays between the time we click and the time we actually get the block to go placed down. Oh, there we go. There's a nice latency-filled chunk. Basically, that's why it takes so long to load it up, because it preloads all this geometry in here. This is the long part. It's not the actual train generation that takes a while. It's this part. And I still haven't implemented that voxel queue, so it breaks if you place voxels rapidly, just like I used to. But it's even worse now that you are generating lots and lots of voxels, because it gets pretty cluttered pretty fast. But I think the #1 issue I'm having is it's doing a crap load of comparisons, because I think for every single face it's doing probably about 200 comparisons just to find the texture, which is absolutely insane. But I basically just did the easiest thing I could do to get dynamically loading textures. I'm going to fix that. What I think I'm going to do is, if you've ever seen, if you play Minecraft and you keep up with the updates, you'll know that they added a model format so that basically you could set up all your UV coordinates and vertices. I'm basically going to do like a simpler version of that. It's just UV coordinates. And basically, if you have anything that needs to get oriented a different way, it'll just load in 6 different ones, because modern computers have plenty of memory, and really it's only, 6 times 6 is 36. That's only 36 extra values it has to store. And whenever you're talking about just single byte variables, that's not huge at all, especially if you only got a few thousand of them. which might sound like a lot, but in memory terms, that's pretty small still. If I had 1,000,000 of them, yeah, I would start to worry about that and make it a bit more efficient. Maybe do some operations. But it's not too awful. There are some things I could probably do to optimize it some more, and that I think the other main thing I can do is stop multiplying, and just set a single fixed chunk size or voxel size. I mean, because currently the voxel size is variable, so it has to multiply it every time you go to load your voxels in. But overall, this is actually starting to shape up to be pretty good. Although I am learning a lot of stuff. This is like my first real project. I've restarted it once already, and I'd like to not do that again. But yeah, it's working out pretty well. Surprisingly well, actually. I'm surprised at how well this runs, though. It's whenever I'm not recording. I don't know how the frame rate is now, but had a little frame rate counter. I think I broke it. Or I might have accidentally deleted it whenever I was undoing some changes. But I was running at about 2,000 frames per second on this demo with this exact terrain on my 670 in i7 with 16 gigs of RAM. So I assume that's pretty good. I don't know how, because I could get Minecraft to run pretty fast on my machine, so I can never really get it above 500 frames per second on anything that's playable graphics, like other than Tiny Fog. But so far it seems like it's probably going to shape up to be a bit more efficient than Minecraft, at least, if not just simply because Java uses garbage collection and C++ doesn't have that. One thing also, I think this program has memory leaks all over the place because I abuse raw pointers a lot. I'm going to start converting everything into smart pointers now. I should have done that from the start, I know, but I was lazy, and I used to using raw pointers. I haven't really gotten used to using the smart pointers. Anyway, I'm going to stop boring you to death. We are going to go ahead and cut off the video here, and I'll see you in the next update. Hopefully it won't be nearly as long as the gap between this one and the last one. One thing I want to do is this train, while it is cool, it's a bit too crazy. And I'm going to try to figure out how to get a little bit more subdued terrain. And also I need to figure out how to get these jaggedy flat top things cut off here. I think they can probably adjust like the lib noise octaves or something like that. Shouldn't be a huge issue. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, and I will see you in the next video.